So Borderlands 3 had an event called Gear Rush that Gearbox put on, and it was for the arms race mode, which they also just recently put out. And basically, this arms race mode is kind of a battle royale, rogue like type of mode where you have to collect as much loot as possible and then send it through an extractor to collect that loot. And there's certain stuff that you can only get through this particular mode, which is kind of cool, but kind of unfortunate in some ways. But we could talk about that another time. What I'm here to discuss is the fact that Gear Rush was a better way to play Arms Race than the original way to play Arms Race. Now, I know it wasn't perfect, but basically, Gear Rush closed the circle faster, so you had less time to extract loot and collect loot and fight enemies and things like that. So you had to move quick. So you had to fight all the stuff super fast and then move on as quickly as possible. Whereas regular arms race, you could kind of take your time a little bit, set up where you're going to go next. In Gear Rush, you just kind of have to go for it. The problem is when the circle closes so fast, because of the way arms race is set up and the way the circle shrinks, you don't have time to go to the farther locations because it takes so long to get there. By the time you get there, you don't have much time left to beat the enemies. And so that was generally the problem with Gear Rush. Granted, the rewards were so much better, though. So that was the trade-off. The circle closed faster, but you got a lot more rewards out of it. Versus regular arms race, where the circle closes slower and you can spend a little bit more time in certain areas. But the problem is, you don't really get that much out of it. Sometimes you only get one or two legendaries. Mind you, if you're unfamiliar with arms race, certain loot that you can collect is located in certain parts of the map. So in Gear Rush, the faster version, again, you couldn't go to those certain places. Where in the regular one, you can go there, but there's no guarantee you're actually going to get it. And so there was kind of this problem with arms race overall. It's just kind of hard to get some of the loot that you want unless you grind it. And it's not as fun to grind it than just straight up farming bosses. I feel like that's more rewarding overall. Whereas you spend your 20 minutes playing arms race and you might get one or two pieces of loot that you might want, right? You might not even want what you end up getting. And so I think what Gearbox needs to do is tweak arms race just a little bit. Take what they did with Gear Rush and just tweak arms race just a smidge. So what I think Gearbox should do is keep the faster circle and the plentiful, bountiful amounts of loot that is found, but to mitigate the fact that you cannot get to certain areas, well, change the boss location. The boss location is always in the middle, and so by the time you get to the fourth or fifth circle closing, you're gonna have to go to the middle of the map. Well, the problem with that is if you couldn't make it to the further locations of the map because the circle is closing so fast, you can only go to the closest ones. So if you change the boss locations, then there's potential that the final location could be closer to an area that you might want to go to. That also makes it challenging because you don't know where the circle's actually going to close. So you really have to pay attention to where you're going, instead of just relying on the fact that, yeah, I know it's going to end up in the middle. Nah, you got to pay attention to the map. It would also help if Gearbox actually put names to the map. That would be fantastic. So, you could coordinate with your friends about the locations that you want to go to. Or, actually make the custom waypoints that you make visible by your friends. That would be helpful too. Those are just two things they could do right now, whether or not they do this idea. If they can't actually program the idea of putting multiple boss locations, all right, fine, I get it. It might be a little difficult to do that. Instead, at least add more starting locations. So that way, you could start a little further away from the boss, maybe closer to an area that you want to go to. Maybe that'll make more areas that were previously inaccessible because the circle is closing so fast, a little more accessible at the end of the day. I feel like that's the better way to do arms race. make the circle close faster, which makes the game go faster, and then change the boss locations, or at least change the starting locations. But I feel like changing the boss locations would be a lot more interesting, because where the circle closes would be more exciting and difficult in a way. So after your time playing Gear Rush for a little bit, after probably the hours that you spent playing Arms Race, what do you feel like could improve about Arms Race in Borderlands 3? If you enjoyed this video, please tap that thumbs up button. Greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and you can get plenty of gameplay videos of brand new games coming out, as well as more discussions like this one about a variety of video games and different news happening in the video game industry. My name is Anthony Shelton. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.